Christmas has always had a strange weight in my chest. Not because of the lights, or the presents, or the carols echoing down neighborhood streets, but because every Christmas growing up, I found myself standing just a little bit farther from the fire. A little colder than my brother. A little more forgotten than my sister. A little more like a guest than a daughter. But I never said anything. Because when you grow up hungry for love, even crumbs look like a feast. So I smiled. I decorated the tree. I watched as Dad bought James a brand new bike one year and Sarah a gold necklace the next, while I unwrapped sweaters 2 sizes too small, clearly grabbed last minute from a bargain bin. And I thanked them anyway. Because in our house, silence was loyalty. And I was nothing if not loyal. That's why I joined the military. Not because I wanted to get away, but because I wanted them to be proud. To finally look at me the way they looked at James when he brought home an A. Or Sarah when she danced at the winter recital. I thought maybe, if I served my country, they'd finally see me. Turns out, the distance only made me easier to forget. I'd been away for 5 years. 5 long, grueling, gut-twisting years. Deployment after deployment. Sandstorms. Sleepless nights. Letters unopened. But still, every December, I'd send a message home. Hope you're all doing well. I'm okay. Miss you guys. Merry Christmas. I never got a reply. But hope, that persistent little flame, kept burning anyway. So this year, when my service ended just in time for Christmas, I was excited. Nervous, but excited. I hadn't asked for much. Just a quiet dinner. Some laughter. Maybe even a hug. I even bought gifts. Real ones. Thoughtful ones. James was expecting a baby. So I got him a handmade baby blanket from a village in Afghanistan. Sarah always loved scented candles. So I had one custom made with a message carved into the glass. You'll always be a light. For Dad, I bought an engraved compass. It read, for the man I followed, even when I didn't know the way. And Mom? She loved lavender. I sent home a package of hand-stitched lavender sachets with a letter. Can't wait to see you soon. I'll be home December 22nd. I imagined her crying when she read it. But she never cried. Because I never even got a reply. 3 days before my flight home, I got a message. Just one. From Dad. 5 words. No punctuation. No warmth. No apology. You're not welcome this year. That was it. No explanation. No reasoning. Just that. Like a door slammed in your face after you've already walked halfway through it. I stared at the screen for so long my vision blurred. I read it again. And again. I waited for a follow-up. Something. Anything. But nothing came. Only the echo of those words pounding inside my skull like drumbeats of abandonment. I don't know what hurt more, those 5 words or the fact that I wasn't even surprised. Because deep down, I knew I'd never really belonged. Still, it didn't stop the tears. I packed away the gifts, canceled my ticket, and typed one word back. Fine. Then I turned off my phone. For 5 days. I stayed quiet. Didn't check messages. Didn't cry anymore. Didn't even think. Just sat in my small apartment, sipping lukewarm tea, watching snow gather against the windowsill like ghosts pressing against the glass. I thought about what I'd done wrong. Thought about whether I should have begged. Maybe apologized, even if I didn't know why. But then, on the morning of December 27th, I woke up. Phone buzzing. 10 missed calls. From James. From Sarah. Even from Dad. And 1 voicemail. From a lawyer. My hand trembled as I played it. A cold voice. Too professional. Too late. Miss Thompson, I'm calling on behalf of your family regarding an urgent estate matter. They've been trying to reach you. My heart stopped. Not because I was worried, but because for the first time in years, They needed me. And that changed everything. The voicemail sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb. Estate matter. That's what the lawyer had said. It was vague enough to sound distant, but sharp enough to cut through 5 years of silence. I didn't call back immediately. Instead, I stared at the wall. My breath fogged the cold air, and the silence in the room was louder than any battlefield I'd ever walked through. I knew something had happened. Someone had died. It wasn't hard to guess who. Dad. It had to be. He was the only one with the kind of pride that would keep him from asking for me, until he couldn't anymore. And now? Now he was gone. Gone before I could ever ask him why. Gone before he could explain why his last words to me were rejection. I grabbed the compass I'd bought for him. Still wrapped. Still untouched. I unwrapped it slowly and read the engraving out loud. For the man I followed, even when I didn't know the way. I laughed bitterly. Wasn't that the truth? I followed him through years of disappointment, hoping one day I'd arrive at love. Instead, I arrived at silence. Until now. Now they wanted to talk. Now they wanted me back. Not because they missed me, but because something in their world had crumbled. And I, apparently, was useful again. I finally returned the call. The lawyer answered quickly. He sounded surprised. Miss Thompson, I'm glad you called. Your father passed away on Christmas Day. I didn't speak. I just listened. He had a heart attack in the early hours of the morning. He left behind a will that's complicated. Complicated. A nice word for messy. For regretful. For guilty. He mentioned you. Specifically. You need to be present for the reading. The family requested we delay it until you could arrive. The family. The same one who told me I wasn't welcome. The same one who ghosted me every Christmas for half a decade. Now they were delaying important business. For me, it was almost poetic. But I didn't say yes immediately. I took a breath. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the moment I read that message. Did he say why he didn't want me there for Christmas? The lawyer paused. I'm sorry. That wasn't in the documents. Of course not. Because some answers don't come wrapped in legal forms. They live in scars. In choices. In the way people look at you, or don't. Still, I agreed to come. Not for Dad. Not for closure. But for clarity. For a final glimpse of the family that had always seen me as a shadow. I arrived at the house 2 days later. It hadn't changed much. Same creaky porch. Same chipped blue door. Same wind chimes Mom insisted sounded like angels. The driveway was full. James' Tesla. Sarah's minivan. And one black sedan that had to belong to the lawyer. I stood at the edge of the yard, gripping the baby blanket I had once planned to give my brother. It still smelled of Afghanistan. Dust. Smoke. And handmade love. As I stepped inside, the warmth hit me like a memory. So did their faces. James was standing by the fireplace. Sarah was on the couch, legs curled under her, holding a tissue. And Mom, she was in the kitchen, pretending to clean dishes that had already been scrubbed. She looked up. Her eyes met mine. But they didn't widen. Didn't soften. Didn't even flicker. Emma, she said quietly. Not with joy. Not with relief. Just, Emma. Like I was a neighbor dropping by. Hey, I replied. The room held its breath. James walked up to me. He looked different. Older. More tired. He tried a smile. Glad you could come. Didn't think I was welcome. I said flatly. He looked down. I'm sorry about that message. Dad wasn't himself that week. Was he ever? I asked. No one answered. Because no one had the courage to. The lawyer cleared his throat. Shall we begin? We all gathered in the living room. I took the recliner in the corner. The seat I always got stuck in growing up. Funny how some things don't change. The lawyer opened a folder. He began reading the will, line by line. Bequests to Sarah. A small trust for James' unborn child. Then he paused. Now regarding Emma Thompson. All eyes turned to me. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Your father left you the house. Silence. I blinked. What? The house and the adjacent land. He also wrote a letter addressed to you. It's sealed. He handed me the envelope. It was thick. My name written in shaky handwriting. Inside, I found 4 pages. But I didn't read them. Not yet. Because I was too busy watching everyone else. Sarah's jaw had clenched. James looked like someone just kicked him. Mom. She turned pale. No one said anything. But the silence said enough. Dad had given me the one thing they all wanted. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the problem. The threat. The outsider who was now at the center of everything. And they hated it. But me? I was done apologizing. Done being quiet. I finally had something they couldn't take. And I wasn't about to let it go. The drive back from the house was quiet. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't hug anyone. Didn't even look back. I just clutched the envelope in my coat pocket and walked out into the cold. Snowflakes floated through the air like ash. Gentle. Silent. Undeniably final. When I got back to my apartment, I lit a candle. Lavender scented. Mom's favorite. Then I sat down at my kitchen table, peeled open the envelope, and unfolded the letter Dad had left behind. The first words made my throat tighten. Emma, I don't deserve your forgiveness. And I won't ask for it. I failed you. I blinked, unsure if I was imagining it. Dad. The man who once told me crying was weakness? Admitting failure? I kept reading. You were always the strongest one. I saw it, even if I pretended not to. You didn't need approval. And maybe that scared me. I didn't know how to love you right. I was too hard, too proud, too scared. I exhaled, and something inside me broke. A dam I didn't know I'd built. Tears rolled silently down my face. But I didn't stop. When you joined the military, I was terrified. Not just for your safety, but because I realized I couldn't protect you. And instead of telling you I was proud, I punished you for being brave. I thought pushing you away would make it hurt less if I lost you. But instead, I just lost you anyway. I gripped the pages tighter. It was too late. This letter, this confession, this apology, it was 5 years too late. He'd never see my face while reading it. Never know that his words finally reached me. He waited until the grave to make peace. But peace doesn't come that easy. Not after years of erasure. Still, the final paragraph stung the most. I left you the house because I owe you something real. Not a gift. A chance. A space that's yours. Maybe it's not enough, but it's what I have. Love always. Even when I didn't show it. Dad, I folded the letter slowly, wiped my cheeks, and whispered to the empty room, you don't get to rewrite history with a signature. Then I looked around at my apartment. Modest. Gray. Barely lived in. It wasn't home. It never had been. But that house, the one filled with ghosts and resentment and cold Christmases, now it was mine. And suddenly, I knew what to do. The next few weeks were a storm of paperwork, silent stares from Sarah, and tension-filled emails from James. Neither of them congratulated me. Instead, they questioned everything. Are you really going to keep the house? Dad must have made a mistake. We were supposed to sell it and split the profits. I didn't reply, because every reply would have been war. And I didn't need war. I'd lived through enough of those overseas. I needed strategy. I needed revenge, but the kind wrapped in silence. The kind where you don't scream. You just rise. So I did. I moved into the house. Alone. Sarah showed up once. Uninvited. She stood at the doorstep with her daughter on her hip, face tight with disdain. Thought I'd show Lily her grandfather's home one last time, she said. I opened the door halfway and looked her in the eyes. Then maybe you should have brought her here before he died. She didn't answer. Just turned and left. James sent me an offer to buy the house. Market price. He wrote. I declined. No explanation. Just one word. No, and with every passing day, their silence grew louder. Because deep down, they knew. They hadn't just lost a father. They'd lost control. And the girl they once ignored? She was no longer the forgotten one. She was the storm. That winter, I did something that shocked the entire neighborhood. I began renovations. Not to erase the past, but to reclaim it. I painted the walls in colors I loved. Replaced the family portraits with photographs from my travels. Mountains, deserts, oceans, soldiers holding hands in sandstorms. I framed Dad's letter, too. Hung it in the hallway. Not out of honor, but as a reminder that words matter, but timing matters more. Then I started something that shook my family to their core. I opened a center in the backyard, where the old shed used to stand. A counseling and career center for veterans. Free of cost. Staffed by people I'd served with. A place where forgotten people were seen. And for the grand opening, I sent just one invitation. To my mom. No RSVP. No pressure. Just, come see what silence built. She didn't show up. But a neighbor told me she sat in her car across the street the entire afternoon. Watching. That was enough. Because the truth was, I didn't need them anymore. I didn't need apologies. Or explanations. Or Christmas dinners filled with fake smiles. I had built something better. I had built peace. And peace, unlike family approval, can't be stolen. The first snow of the new year came early. Thick flakes coated the roof like icing on a house that had once only offered bitterness. But this winter was different. Inside, warmth bloomed. Not from a fire, but from something deeper. Freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't begging for a seat at a table that was never built for me. I had built my own. And the people who sat around it now were ones who knew pain. Who knew sacrifice. Who had looked death in the face, just like I had, and come back holding pieces of themselves they didn't know how to fit back together. Those were my people. Not because we wore uniforms, but because we carried scars. The Veterans Outreach Center opened its doors on January 10th. The first to walk in was Malik, a Marine I'd met in Kuwait. He limped from a shattered knee and a broken home. The second was Carla, a medic who had lost 3 fingers saving a child in Syria. The third was me. We didn't need paperwork to belong. We needed space. And I gave it to them. Every brick in that renovated center was proof that I had taken what they used to bury me and built something out of it. James heard about it a week later. He sent a message. I still remember the words. So this is what you're doing with Dad's house? Turning it into a charity project. I smiled. Didn't even waste a reply. Because to him, it was a waste. But to me, it was resurrection. 1,000 silent wounds stitched together into something living. And I wasn't done yet. The local newspaper caught wind of the story. They interviewed me. Took pictures. Asked about my military background. Why I opened this center. What the house meant to me. I told them the truth. That it was once filled with silence. And now, it echoed with healing. That it was once a cold place. Now it was warm. Not because of inheritance, but because of purpose. The article ran on the front page with the headline, Veteran reclaims her story and her family home for something bigger. Mom must have seen it. Because 2 days later, I found her standing at the end of the driveway. She didn't walk up. She didn't call out. Just stood there, wrapped in a coat I remembered from childhood. She looked smaller than I remembered. More fragile. Like time had finally caught up to the woman who once ruled over our lives with judgment and tight-lipped pride. I stepped outside. Met her in the snow. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just stood there. Two women bound by blood. And by silence. Finally, she spoke. Her voice cracked. I read the article. I nodded. She looked past me, toward the house. I didn't know he wrote you a letter. He didn't tell you? I asked. She shook her head. He wasn't good at talking. No, I said softly. He was good at shutting people out. Her eyes watered, but she blinked it away. I'm sorry for what happened. For not saying anything when he sent that message. I didn't respond right away. Because sorry can come too late. But it can still be true. She reached into her purse and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. I kept this, she said. It's yours. I unwrapped it slowly. It was a photo. Of me. In uniform. One I had sent years ago from the field. And on the back, Dad had scribbled one sentence. She became more than I ever was. The wind cut through us. But I didn't shiver. Because for the first time, I felt steady. I looked at Mom and said, I forgive you. But I don't forget. She nodded. I understand. And she walked away. No begging. No long speeches. Just a woman walking away from her daughter, who had finally stopped walking toward her. That night, I lit another lavender candle, stared at the flickering flame, and realized they'd had their chance. Their years. Their holidays. Their silences. And now it was my turn. To live. To give. To breathe without needing their permission. For so long, I had measured my worth by their reactions. Their approval. Their absence. But now I measured it by the lives I helped. By the warmth in a house that had once been a monument of rejection. By the mirror, where I looked myself in the eyes each morning and said, You are not who they said you were. And I believed it. Because I had built a new world. Without them. And somehow, that was the sweetest revenge of all. I didn't expect what came next. After Mom's quiet visit, the silence returned. But it felt different now. Not a wound, but a boundary. A shield. And I wore it proudly. The center thrived. Veterans who once sat in silence now shared their stories over coffee. Grief became healing. Isolation turned into belonging. The same walls that once ignored my laughter now echoed with purpose. And then, one morning, an email arrived. From my father's former attorney. Subject line: Urgent family matter. I opened it without flinching. It was about a trust fund. Apparently, hidden within the legal language of the will, there was a clause. One even James and Sarah hadn't known about. It stated that if the house remained under my name for more than 6 months and was used in service to others, a dormant fund would activate. A sizable one. My father had invested in real estate for years. There was more money tied to that house than anyone realized. And now, it was mine. All of it. The lawyer scheduled a final meeting. Said the family would be present, since they contested the distribution. I didn't care. I went. Wore my dress uniform. Not out of pride, but because I wanted them to see everything they had tried to ignore. I walked into the office. James was pacing. Sarah sat with her arms crossed. Mom avoided my eyes. When the lawyer began to speak, I didn't listen to the numbers. I watched their faces. As each zero was read aloud. As the terms became undeniable. As the realization sank in. That the person they had dismissed, overlooked, and pushed out, was now the sole benefactor of everything. James stood up first. This isn't fair. He snapped. She didn't even spend time with Dad. I smiled. Come. I didn't have the chance. Sarah glared. He would have never left all this to you if he wasn't dying? I interrupted. Her mouth snapped shut. The lawyer cleared his throat. These were your father's wishes. And Emma met every condition. They had nothing left to say. No arguments. Just the sound of regret filling the room like smoke. I stood to leave. But before I did, I turned back. And I spoke the only words that truly mattered. You all made your choice. And now I've made mine. I don't want revenge. I want peace. And peace means letting go. James looked away. Sarah's eyes burned. Mom finally met my gaze. Tears welled. But I didn't flinch. Because the girl who once begged for crumbs was gone. I was no longer the shadow. I was the storm. And they finally saw it. Too late to undo. That night, I returned home. To my house. To the center. To the life I had carved from the wreckage of their rejection. And I felt no pain. No anger. Only gratitude. Because sometimes, betrayal is the soil where strength grows. Where identity blossoms. Where destiny is rewritten. They taught me that love shouldn't hurt. That silence can be louder than words. But most of all, that when you're not welcome at their table, it's time to build your own. With your hands. Your purpose. And your truth. So I ask you, if you've ever been cast aside by the ones you thought would love you most, what did you build from it? And when they tried to come back, did you let them in? Or did you finally choose peace?